Yeah, right.
Excellent. Okay, so if anyone doesn't know me, I'm John King, and I'm the lucky guy who's the chair of this ad hoc committee. Gabe is on it, as is Peter, and we've also had meetings which Brian Bohannon, Janet Anderson, and David Dubert have been present since they're going to be, if this passes, that they're going to be involved in this as well. Um, I was initially the alternate Islesboro rep on the Maine State Ferry Service Advisory Committee after the passage of Tariff 8, which is somewhat infamous. Uh, Gabe at the time was the primary rep. We then kind of flip flopped. I became the primary rep for a while, and Gabe has been the alternate. And then I got mad at DOT with how they were handling the successor to the Margaret Chase Smith, whereupon Peter Wilcox was kind enough to uh, take over as primary rep. And but I one of the reasons I got involved was Tariff 8, and uh, and I kind of continued to be involved. The advisory board has a finance subcommittee that I was on when I was involved with it, and I've still been dealing with the other folks who are on it. And Peter and Gabe are on that committee as well. Um, uh, the what initiated this from my perspective was when we saw the 2026 budget for the first time, which was last fall. Um, that was basically a budget that projected a 15.8% increase for the 2026 fiscal year against an inflation rate far less than that. And that has been a continuing trend. That was one precipitating factor because I believe that we're going to see increased tariffs no matter what. And we don't have any say over that, really. Um, the other thing that precipitated it is the tariffs right now, notwithstanding our efforts to keep them under control, are very high. Particularly, we got a peak season and an off season now, and I was not against that. I thought it's eight months of off season and 4 months of peak season, and what happened was Tariff 8 was so high that the ridership was actually going down. And the concept was, well, if we could keep the tariffs down most of the year for residents of the island, that would be a good thing. The demand is actually very high for the 4 months of June through September, so that even if the tariffs are high, the revenue does not go down generally because the demand is just there. So I think in the concept of that, I think is not a bad thing. Um, but last fall, thinking that this is going to go up again, I looked at the numbers and I just the peak season rates are very high, particularly for families. And my thought was, well, maybe we could come up with a program where island residents enjoy the off-season rates year round. We've been arguing on the advisory board. Gabe and Peter and I have all argued with no measure of success whatsoever that uh, the that the ferry service and DOT ought to provide island residents with a resident rate so that it is affordable to live on the island, particularly insofar as younger families are concerned. Um, right now, if you have two young kids who are minors, and you want to take the family across the bay for a day or more, it's the round trip for a couple and two minor children who have to pay minor rates is 83.50, which is just not sustainable. And I am of the opinion that we are not going to be able to attract year-round, regular resident members of our community when they have to face that. I mean, we've got great systems that, we've got a great uh, medical center. We've got Boardman Cottage. We've got the two markets, but and the healthcare center is great, but we don't have medical specialists. We don't have vets. We don't have hardware stores. We don't have prescription medication available. Well, actually, the Island Market will pick it up at Hannaford for us, but nonetheless, there are a lot of barriers for families, in my humble estimation. So, what Dave and Peter and I talked about this, and the proposal is well, first of all, the proposal is for a pilot program for 1 year to see if it works. I am cautiously optimistic that it would work. The subcommittee has met a few times, and we talked about how big a program should this be. And we tried to do so in a way that we tried to approach this in a way that the proposal would have a nice effect for those 4 months without being overly expensive. And so what we proposed was we considered 5 tickets, 10 tickets, or 15 tickets that households could purchase. And the concept is that each household would designate a head of the household who would have the opportunity. And we decided on 10 tickets because we wanted to have a reasonable impact over this 12-week period. As it turns out, the 12-week period wouldn't be a 12-week period anyway, because if the warrant passes, the money would not be available until July 1st anyway. So this first time around, it would be a 3-month period. Every family would have a head of the household who would sign an agreement with the town. The agreement would name the head of the household and name any other adult members of the household and minor members of the household. It would only be limited to vehicle tickets and walk-on adult and minor tickets. Administratively, we can't go out and measure trucks and things like that. That would not work very well. The head of the household would have the right to buy 10 vehicle tickets and 10 tickets for each other member of the household during this period of time. And that's basically it. There are a lot of nuances to this. If the warrant were to pass, what we would propose doing is having an agreement, which is part of the package. I'm happy to answer any questions about that as we go along here. That the head of the household would sign. That agreement would be kept in the town office and available to Dave and Tina. The folks who choose to participate, and I ought to say the folks who choose to participate would be limited to island residents. We proposed that for a couple of different reasons. One is we wanted to keep the program fiscally under control. If we don't limit it, we have no way of projecting a reasonable budget. So it's limited to island residents who sign an agreement and provide us with the members of their household. If things change, the agreement gets a little bit down in the weeds. If things change, folks are supposed to advise us. we asked people to purchase their tickets in advance, so nobody's rushing into the town office saying I have to make the 3:30 boat. Things of that nature. And the agreement kind of speaks for itself once you have a chance to read it. But if folks have any questions about that, I'd be happy to try to answer them. We created a budget which is just slightly under $55,000 for to fund this, and I'll just give you a quick overview of how we did that. The latest census has year-round residents of 602 people. We were a little bit arbitrary. What we said was, okay, let's hypothesize that half of those 300 people are couples. And let's hypothesize that half of those people or half of those households are households of a couple and two children. We know that's not true and it's not accurate, but we don't have the we don't have the ability to drill down and determine exactly what those numbers are. And what we were trying to do is be a bit conservative about this, and projecting that the use would be robust, perhaps more robust than it actually would be. And then doing that, we just said, okay, 10 tickets per, if couples, you got a vehicle and a adult walk-on. A household of a couple and two children have a vehicle, a walk-on adult, and two walk-on minors. And that came out to basically $53,812.50. What it projects is, just so you know what the impact would be, if two adults in a car would save $19.25 a trip. If you have a family of four with a driver, an adult walk-on, and two minor walk-ons, that family would save $33.25 a trip. So you can project that out. If somebody were to use, if a family were to, if a couple were to maximize the 10 trips, the 10 tickets allowed, the savings would be $192.50. If a family of four, and this is kind of dramatic to me, if a family of four were to maximize and go over to the mainland 10 times, for whatever reason, be it medical or whatever, just the savings to them would be $332.50, which kind of, to me, emphasizes the impact that the current tariff has on families. It's pretty dramatic. And with Brian's help, we tried to project what the cost of that would be. And in the overview, there's a cost section. We project that the cost to taxpayers would be approximately $8 per $100,000 of valuation. So if you're evaluated at $400,000, you're talking a tax increase of approximately $32. One thing I should mention is I've sat in on a lot of the select board meetings as well as the school board meeting that we recently had, and I give all these folks a ton of credit for being as fiscally conservative and responsible as possible, because I haven't participated, but I've watched the select board chopping away at things to keep costs down, and I respect that and I admire it. And as one of the select board members said in a recent meeting, how do we project this after we've just spent hours trying to keep costs down? And and I said, well, I think it's a cost benefit analysis, and I think maybe Gabe and Peter can speak to that as well. Um, and If I haven't covered anything, I just wanted to make a mention of the fact that I'm I'm hoping that we can have one more live meeting once folks have had an opportunity to review all the materials and attend this meeting. We had it tentatively scheduled for May 4. Well, it would be live and Zoom, but I would be live because I'll be back shortly. And Okay, I've talked for 15 minutes. Peter and Gabe, do you want to mention, add anything to what I've had to say?
Well, Gabe said something that certainly resonated with me. When you look at the fact that 80% of the property on the island is owned by non-residents, and that the numbers of the school have gone down, I think now it's 30 children enrolled in the school. And those aren't good numbers for the health of Islesboro. And I see this as a way that we can help people live on the island.
Hey, this is Gabe, just chiming in, just following up on what Peter said. I think if you look at the recent meetings the school has had in terms of looking at, drop in enrollment, sort of lower year-round population and concerns, I think that's something that the entire island is concerned about. I know I'm concerned about it. In terms of what can we do to get more families on the island? What can we do to get more kids in the school? I think that's really good for the community. It's good for the school. And I think this is just one possibility. I mean, is this a silver bullet that's going to solve the island's problems? I think the answer is no. But could it make a difference? I think the answer to that is potentially yes. And I think it's the kind of thing that the community ought to be trying to do to see what can we do to make this island have more year-round residents, have more kids at the school, make it a viable year-round community. And so that's sort of, I certainly support bringing it to the taxpayers. There's a cost benefit here about, what are we going to pay? What are people willing to pay for taxes for this, right? That's a question, but I do think it's something, given the broader context of where we are as a community, about what I see at the school board meetings and how many people show up with a concern about the school, with a concern about lower enrollment, that I think that this is worthwhile to at least bring to the community and say, hey, this is one possibility. This is something that we can try to do to see if we can relieve the burden on people who are currently here, to see if we can attract others and say, hey, it's not going to be quite as expensive as it otherwise might look, at least to ride the ferry. And I'm on board for other broader possibilities as well, and in ways that we might be able to facilitate families coming to the island, the ways that we might be able to support people who are here. But this is just sort of part of that. This is trying to do something in what to me seems like a very difficult and concerning situation for the entire community and the viability of the year-round population of the island.
John, Bob Cochan has his hand raised.
Sure. Go ahead, Bob.
Good job. Gentlemen and lady, does our ferry break even? Do you know? Or does it generate a positive revenue for the state?
No, it loses money.
Our particular ferry does, even with its ridership?
Oh, our fair. So I think so. I haven't looked at these numbers since a few years. My understanding is Islesboro is the only ferry that beats the 50% target set by the legislature, but I don't believe that our ferry actually makes money. And I think if you want to look at the broader ferry service as a whole, right, there are benefits that go along with having other ferries, even if those ferries are losing money, such as substitute crews, spare boats. There are other things that are in the mix that are hard to quantify in terms of, is our ferry a standalone moneymaker? I think the answer to that is, at least I don't believe our ferry makes money, but it doesn't lose as much as every other ferry.
Okay, good answer.
I think it's pretty clear that we carry a lot of the other parts of the system on our back, but it's very, very difficult to answer that question because you've got people at DOT, you've got people at the Main State Ferry Service, you've got a central office in Rockland, and we used to have some people that had some little bit of notion of who did what to whom, but that, unfortunately, we lost the fellow who really knew the stuff. He passed away. And any kind of rational analysis is extraordinarily difficult.
Well, having said all that, and if construction slows down on this island, the ridership that pays probably a very high percentage of all the walk-ons every day, of all those construction folks, if that goes away, or at least to a high degree, then our ferry probably won't be above 50%. And that's going to, down the road, that would affect the tariffs again. So it's my suggestion is that we push for the state to give the islanders a yearly pass of some sort.
Well,
I think we're all on board with that.
We have done that.
Yeah, we've tried. That's a good idea. We're on board, and the state is not on board, I think, is my assessment of that. But I totally agree.
Well, what can we do to get the state on board? I mean, the DOT may not be, but what about the governor and our senators and so forth?
For one thing, the good news is that Mike Ray, who is our state representative, is now, and I think perhaps because of some urging by island folks, a member of the Transportation Committee. When I was the representative on the advisory board, there was one member of the Transportation Committee from Bar Harbor, there was one from Arundel, and there were a couple down in the Portland area, and everybody else on the Transportation Committee was west of the Turnpike. Mm-hmm. And that is changing. So that's one thing. And one of the gubernatorial candidates is an islander. Who knows where that's going to go, but change is very slow, but it is happening a little bit.
We have another hand raised, Doug Weldon.
Sure, Doug.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Good deal. In dealing with the ferry service, I'm always wary of the law of unintended consequences. And I know a few years ago, there was some proposal floated where the town might actually, and this was, I think the commissioner did, the town might actually pay part of the cost of the ferry. In other words, whatever, all of a sudden it'd be in our budget to deal with it, and that might help lower the tariffs. So, so my question would be, what happens? First of all, what are we likely to trigger with the state if we're supporting the ferry basically anyway on our own and give them some idea that maybe we don't want them to have? And what happens, obviously, if we evaluate all this and then we stop our support at somewhere in the future? If we do it after the pilot program, that may not be too big a deal, but if we do it 5 years down the road, then we have a thing that people are counting on that we're taking away because it's taking more and more of our town budget. So it's the consequences that I'm concerned about, both on the fact of the ferry service thinking, oh, let's let the town just keep paying more and we'll put that in the legislation or something, and also what happens if we stop at some point doing what we're doing.
That's a very good question. And that is a situation that is somewhat in flux because when we were having the battles about keeping the boats on the islands at night, the white paper that former Commissioner Van Note brought into the hearings suggested that the funding be changed. And instead of having a 50% operating subsidy from the state, that we switch to a 45 state, 45 fare box revenue, and 10% served islands. But you're dealing with a expenditure that is quickly getting up to $20 million a year. So the island, the proposal that the islands just send money to DOT was a very expensive proposal. and when we were talking about Tariff 9, that's another thing that they put in the back was like, if the towns gave us X amount of money, the tariff would be this, which is all good and fine, except that, expenses keep going up and up and up. So while it looks great for tomorrow, 2 years down the road, it isn't so great. And then the final thing I would say about that is from the ferry services perspective, this program is really revenue neutral. I mean, we're buying tickets for what they're selling them to we would be buying tickets for what they would be selling them to the general public. If anything, it might increase the ridership, not decrease it. And they were actually the ones, because Gabe and Peter and I were making these comments about resident, we had in the written comments when they were coming up with the most recent tariff, we were like, give us a resident ticket, give us a commuter ticket that makes sense and is user friendly. And they said in their response to the written comments and the oral comments that there's nothing holding the towns back from doing whatever they want to do when it comes to, including what we're proposing right now. So I don't think it would be negative. And in fact, what I would like to think is if we could say, look, we can make island communities more vibrant, more vigorous by making them more affordable for families and regular folks to live there. And it's only costing 55 grand. You guys are spending $20 million a year. Why can't you do that? That is what I'm hoping we might be able to say to them a year or two down the road.
Mm-hmm. And if the budget gets to be too high for the town to support what your proposal is, then what are the families supposed to do? I say this because of the national turmoil in the last year over the withdrawal of the funds supporting healthcare, health insurance that we put in because of the pandemic, and that's still a big political issue. But the people who say, well, that's going to hurt people, they're the point. If the town can't afford it down the road, that's a point too.
Right, but that's why we thought, we considered 5, 10, and 15, and let me see here. 5 was 26,000, 10 was 54,000, and 15 was 80,000. And so what we tried to do was balance it to say, as a pilot, you've got 12 weeks, you got 10 tickets, that could have an impact on people. And it's not extraordinarily expensive. And we also have part of the agreement is that if we, God forbid, were to go over budget, we just suspend the program.
Hey, John.
So, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and finish, but we have some people in the room with hands raised too.
Oh, okay.
You ready? Go ahead.
John, I didn't want to interrupt. John, first off, I really do appreciate all the work you put into this. It's not an easy task to come up with a program like this. And I think I have more of a statement of concern, more so than a direct question, but do have a question that ties into it. And the first one being that, but my big concern being that I'm pretty well documented in my lack of faith in the ferry service to do what's right. And I don't think I'm the only person in town who has their skepticisms.
You're not wrong there, Peter.
So as such, I'm, having the few years of experience listening to reports from the ferry service committee and, listening to what the service has to say, it comes as no surprise to me that they're effectively attempting to, of course they would say that we can pick up the bill, and make it as easy as we want to on our citizens. My big concern is that what this will wind up doing is effectively indicating to the ferry service that we have rolled over and accepted, whatever increase in cost they want to throw at us, and that the impact of those increases is not going to be as much because the municipality is going to help foot the bill. So that the root of that being that as years progress, the cost of this sounds like it's bound to increase. And if I say this, I don't mean it as sarcastic as it's going to sound, but miraculously, this is the reason that people start coming to town and we kind of reverse our population program or problem. It's going to result in new residents showing up reliant on a program like this, which is going to make it even more difficult to shut it down later on. If it becomes, a budgetary nightmare. And I just sort of fail to see necessarily how implementing a program that will ultimately raise taxes on everybody and be difficult to remove, and if not removed, will have to increase in cost, therefore increasing the increase. I don't really see it as being something that aids the affordability problem that we face in town. And the questions that I would have that link into that, the first one being what Doug was just mentioning, an understanding that should the voter approved budget be reached this year, it might be necessary to suspend the program. I hope that that's not indicative of the understanding that you're going into this with not enough money to support what's being proposed, or that there's a fairly good chance that we will run out before we serve as many people who have been impacted by this increase. And this relation is how we talked about the cost of the ticket program, but we haven't really talked about the cost of the administrative increase related to this. Do we know yet how the town is going to support it? Will it cause another employee that we'll need to budget for? I'm worried effectively about this program being another new budget line that is effectively impossible to remove and will only increase in cost. Lot to take in there. Two questions are, what's going on with this of understanding that the budget might be reached before we serve everybody? And do we have an estimate on the admin cost that's associated?
Let me answer sequentially. First of all, the suspension thing is really kind of a safety valve. And if anything, I think when we came up with a budget, I think we were quite conservative, and I would be very surprised if we went over myself. But this has never been done before, so we wanted to try to put some safety valves in there. On the administrative side, we're dealing with a community of 600, and frankly, I'd be happy if we got 5 families out of this. So the answer is I don't know. The answer on the second question is I don't know, but I doubt very much that we would have a very, very large change as a result of this. It's just because we're not dealing with New York City or anything. We're dealing with Islesboro, Maine, with a population of 602 people.
Is the town office on board with this?
Dave, Tina has not attended any meetings. Dave has, and Brian has been working arm in arm with me on it too.
I mean, more in the administration of the sale and purchase of the tickets.
We, I've talked to Brian about that. We've had some preliminary discussions about, it hasn't passed yet, or it may not pass at all, but we've had some very basic discussions about, what I would prognosticate doing is having discussions with EJ down in Rockland, so we could buy the tickets in bulk and wouldn't have to be running over to Grindle Point 3 times a week.
No, I guess I sort of more meant the actual operation of the program, being who's in charge of the record keeping. Has the town office, are they open to the idea of adding this into their list of duties to maintain this program?
I haven't, I've talked to Dave and I've talked to Brian primarily. I have not really talked to Tina about it, but right. I came up with an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of ticket sales. I would, and as I mentioned, I would ask that the participants execute agreements prior to July, so there's not a crush. And that, I think initially I anticipate there would probably be some bumps in the road, but I don't see them as insurmountable.
John, it was my understanding that we changed the requirements for tickets to only being a registered voter. Is that correct?
Well, we're having discussions about that as being our final recommendation of the select board. But I think that makes a lot of sense, because it's not something I think you want to have a lot of discretion on. I think you just basically want to say, if you want to be a participant, register to vote. It doesn't kill you. My concern was, well, maybe some people, as a matter of social conscience or something, refuse to vote, but I don't know why they'd refuse to register to vote. That doesn't mean they have to vote. And it makes it easy and easy for the folks in the town. You gotta vote a roll and you just say yay or nay.
Yeah, if I can chime in for a second, we actually do have a pretty good idea of how we're going to implement this at the town office. And one of the committee's most recent suggestions has actually been, because we have to wait on the funds to be available starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, we could actually use the June timeframe to preliminarily start gathering paperwork and signing people up for the program and getting all of that out of the way, so that when July rolls around, that then we have a lot of kind of the preliminary stuff out of the way. So the day-to-day transactions are relatively easy.
Sure. Thank you.
John, did you still have a question? Steve Pendleton in the room is next, I believe.
Hi there.
Yes,
hey, I wanted to join today. I wasn't able to be at the last select board meeting. I was out of the country, so I missed the initial discussion on this. I think what I want to focus on with my comments is really more of a statement. It's not a question, but I want to focus on the precedent that being set by bypassing the select board's budget authority and processes that have been in place over the last 5 weeks. What concerns me about the proposal, and I think the proposal is absolutely outstanding. So I have nothing negative to say about the concept, the idea, whether I think when you're thinking about something like this, there's probably another 50, 100 great ideas. I think this could help people in the community here today. It's not going to draw people this year, of course, may draw people in the future. I don't want not gonna get into that. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that the select board's members are elected to represent the town in the best interest. And what I've talked to the board members, what I'm concerned about is context. The fact that we had to trim hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the initial budget proposal to reach a number, a percentage, or whatever you want to say, of an increase that we felt was reasonable for the community to accept, that provided the services that we're able to afford, went in, over a multiple week process. And then an example is we took the healthcare budget that had a couple $100,000 increase, cut that over 50%, for example. To bring this to the community without any context, other than it's a 1% increase, let's say, it's a $55,000 proposal, independent of that exposure to the whole process, diminishes the work that was done by the people that represent them, and doesn't provide context to why we decided not to allow this important objective to move forward. So I just want to say that I'm concerned about that because I think it's a bad step. Sets a precedent that I don't think we want to do, because the health board could come back, any of the committee members could come back and put an argument, well, we want to bring it to the community. Okay, there's nothing bad about that. We represent the community, but if you don't think we're representing us well enough, then there's probably an appropriate way to do that. So I just wanted to bring that forward because based on that, I can't support this amendment or whatever the term would be for it, not on its merit, but on the overall process. And I just wanted to go on record to that and bring you my opinion on that. So thank you.
Steve, I appreciate your comments, and I hope that nobody thinks that I'm being nefarious about trying to get this warrant, but I to the voters. But I mean, I'm this is the first time I've ever done any of this, and I think the ad hoc committee was appointed and to make recommendations, and that's kind of what we did. I think in the past, I'm not sure, maybe Gabe could speak to this. There have been warrants on considered being presented to the voters that the select board has not recommended, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I appreciate your comments, and I also, having sat through the select board meetings, I appreciate all the efforts that the select board has made to get the regular annual budget under control in a fiscally responsible manner.
Yeah, let me just say, none of those comments were directed at any of the huge amount of work went into this, as Pete said. And so I'll stand on what I already said, but I don't want it to be taken as an affront to any individual.
We have another question in the room. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One, just specifically, John, the $400,000 property values, are you talking about the assessed value of a home or of the real estate property?
The assessed value.
Land? That would include the home as well as land?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
You came up with a figure of 400,000 and trying to figure out what it would cost us as taxpayers, how much our taxes would go up, and you said $400,000 property value. Is that the home and the land, and what is it?
It would be land and property, I believe. Just the assessed value of what is owned.
Yeah, okay, it would be nice to know just what property we're talking about.
Yeah, well, we tried to do it. People talk about mill rates all the time, and nobody has any notion of what that means. So I asked, we tried to make it so people could look at last year's tax bill and say, okay, this is what it means to me.
Yeah. So I have both a no and a yes on this whole thing. I guess I can start with the no first. We've been hearing so much, so many of us are struggling with our taxes now. And the school board and the selectmen are pulling hairs out in order to bring, cut their budgets and then all of a sudden present them with, oh, well, now we want to increase your taxes is a very negative thing, in my opinion. Frankly, personally, I want everything done possible to hold my real estate taxes down because they are horrendous. And I had a horrendous increase in this recent reevaluation in the last couple of years. A lot of us had big increases. And I don't think this is a very good time to just come forward at the last minute and say, okay, we want taxes again. I'm also concerned about the process that Steve was just talking about. Seems like it's not a good time to bring this up. And I have a lot of questions about, and this would tie in with administration as far as how the town could deal with it. The definition of a resident. Now, I just heard it thrown out tonight that a registered person in the town. Well, there are people who are registered to vote here that don't live here. Would they be entitled to these? I mean, I think the definition of a resident needs to be made very, very clear. Is it that they have a driver's license? Is it that they live here over 6 months or 4 months of the year? Or is it that they vote here? I mean, there's so many ways to define a resident here, and I just think that needs to be made very, very clear. Otherwise, this could go way out of whack. And I have a little problem with the way this is being funded by taxing the very people that are already having trouble trying to stay here. A yes thing might be, as I understand the town, I haven't heard anything lately, but they were looking at it. Buying this land down at Grindle Point and making a parking lot there, and I thought, well, geez, if that happens, could they charge parking as they do in Lincolnville over there and use the funds from people that come over here and park all day, all week, whatever, put those funds toward contributing to bringing down the cost of these tickets for a few months out of the year? That's all I have to say right now.
Michael?
Any response to that, or should we go to the next person whose hand is raised?
I don't really have a response. I mean, I certainly understand people who struggle with their taxes, and I understand and I appreciate their opinions. That's what democracy is all about. So I thank you for the comments. In terms of residents, I can say one thing. I think the simplest thing is, are you a voter? And my brief response to is, if somebody's registered and they're not living here, I doubt they'd be buying a lot of ferry tickets. But the real focus is trying to make it easy for the folks who have to deal with this at the town office.
So the next person is Michael Giordino.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
It's a miracle. So rather than doing an add-on to the taxes for everybody in town, I wonder whether you could get more leverage out of this thing by giving a number one, like a tax credit to people who are new residents. Give them a 5-year tax break, something along those lines, to encourage people to move to the island. They know that, they're going to get X dollars taken off of their property tax for 5 years and ease the pain of the back and forth on the ferry. And you could use a similar tax credit for, let's say, houses. I'll just throw a number out, valued at 750,000 or less. Give those people a tax credit to help them afford the back and forth on the ferry. People with houses that are $1 million or 2 million or 3 million or more probably don't need help getting across on the ferry. So that approach might be more palatable, and just for what it's worth, something to think about.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Michael. But I came up with this because I'm a kind of a ferry guy. If you want to be the tax credit expert, I welcome. I mean, I think it's probably not a bad idea, but that's a whole other warrant, right? And that has all kinds of implications. But it's not a bad comment.
Yeah, I could piggyback on that. I mean, I thought about tax credit for, I know people that choose not to use that ferry in the summer a lot of the time. And a lot of people that live here that aren't particularly wealthy, that just wouldn't care to go to mainland in June to September 2 or 3 times a month. Could they get a credit if they choose not to take advantage of this program? I'm sure that would be a nightmare to implement.
I think it's very simple to put this down into simplistic numbers. If you go across the island, if you have a $400,000 tax base, property and home, and you get charged $8 per $100,000, that's $32. And if you go across the ferry twice, it will save you $38.50. So basically, if anybody goes across twice in that period of time, they've more than saved what they would have anyway. So we're kind of missing the underlying benefit of the savings. That's all.
I think, I mean, these are all good ideas and stuff, but we're here to talk. I mean, there's a good plan in place. Good idea. And I think those guys, it's really short time to the meeting. So, again, I applaud what they've done. You could, if you want to pass it, you did do this the first year, you could throw all these great ideas in later, but, anyway, probably isn't going to change much from where we're at.
John, I don't know if you can see the messages in the chat.
Something just flew by me. Oh, hold on a second.
Can you read it?
Silas Babbage had a message.
Oh, about
And Tim Fallon before him had a message too.
okay.
Let's just read it.
I can read it.
Okay, he says, have to jump off soon. A few notes. Registering to vote is a good way to do this. It is a felony to vote where you don't live, so likely to be a non-issue. I like this idea as relatively simple, not overly expensive, and can be implemented fast. Many of the other ideas, all good, but will take much longer. As noted previously, this is not a silver bullet, but one of many things that can/should be tried. And Silas Babbage sent a note to everyone. Have you explored fundraising privately? The answer to that is no. I have not, or we have not. It just didn't come up. Anyone else for the time being? Wow.
Don't see anybody.
Okay. Tentatively, I understand the overview document that Dan put that in the Ellsworth Island News. So that there's it's out. Carrie has reserved Monday, May 4th, same time, same place, and I'll be there. So, assuming anyone has any additional questions or there are other people that would be interested in talking about this, I'll be happy to be there.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Great
John.
meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
Where's the gavel?